Okay, so this is another aspect of meaning that we haven't analyzed from the field of semantics, which is the types of relationships that the meanings of the words create with each other. Remember that we have been talking for a long time about sense and how words have meanings and how those different meanings are related to one another. So those relationships, we call them lexical relations or sometimes sense relations. And it's basically about the network of meanings that the meanings of words create and how they relate to each other, how they stand in similarity or in opposition in from different perspectives. We're going to see some of that. All right. Okay, so these are some ideas from, obviously these are going to be ideas from the author John Said, which is the one we have been following in the book, John Said right here. All right, so let's read this really quickly. So in a language system, these are some ideas from Saussure. Depending on their meaning, words are interconnected and they stand in different relations with each other or against each other, against other words from related fields. We're gonna see specifically what we mean by fields, and we can see this with this first example. If someone says to you, "I saw my mother just now," right? You know, without any further information, that the speaker saw a woman. You don't need to know that, but you know that the speaker saw a woman, or at least the first impression that you get, the immediate impression, is that the speaker saw a woman. So why is that? So that's because the words mother and woman are related in their senses. The senses of the word mother and woman are related in the system, in the language system in which they exist. That means that language is basically a network of relationships. If we see it from the perspective of meaning, language is basically a system of relations, a network of relations, if you will. All right, so for example, and a little bit of further evidence for this relation. So the author says the different kinds of conclusions that speakers may draw from an utterance. This is the evidence that I'm talking about. The different kinds of conclusions that speakers may draw from an utterance. So, for example, when you have these groups of sentences, you can see that the meaning of the second sentence is going to follow directly from the meaning of the first sentence. So normally, the meaning of the B sentence follows directly from the meaning of the A sentence. So let's read some of that. It says, "My bank manager has just been murdered." So just from that, just from the word murdered, you can know that the bank manager is dead. The third assumption, the third sentence, "My bank will be getting a new manager," is information that you can get from context. It's information that you can sort of get from a critical analysis of the first sentence, but it's not a sentence that follows logically from the first one. It's not something that follows logically from the first one. So why is that? Let's see the other examples. Rob has failed his statistics exam. So Rob hasn't passed his statistics exam. So again, sentence B follows directly from sentence A. And if we see sentence C, Rob can't bank on a glittering career as a statistician. We don't know that. That's just contextual information, but we don't really know anything about that. So we can see that sentence B follows directly or logically from sentence A, but but sentence C doesn't really do that. Let's see the third set of sentences. "This bicycle belongs to Sinead." And the second sentence says Sinead owns this bicycle. Then again, it's the same thing. Sentence B follows directly from sentence A, but sentence C doesn't. Sinead rides a bicycle. We don't know that. This person can have the bicycle and not know how to ride the bicycle. That is just contextual information that doesn't follow directly from sentence A. We can see that the relationship between this sentence is in the words that they use. There is a relationship between the verb murder and the word dead. There is a relationship between the word fail or failing and the word passing. And there is a relationship between the word belong and the word own. You see? So there is a logical relationship between these words. And that's why the relationship of sentences of the logical relationship of meaning can be analyzed because of the relationships between these pairs of words. So we can see that these words have different kinds of relationships. For example, murder and death have a different type of relationship from fail and passing. Because murder and death basically, well, they are not synonyms, but they are close related, close to each other in meaning. But failing and passing are opposites, right? And belonging or belong and owning, they are also different, but they can describe the same situation just from different perspectives. So these words, they stand in relationships with each other. It's just that they stand in different relationships. And those relationships between their meanings, those are the ones we want to analyze. All right, so the lexicon, if you remember what the lexicon is the collection of words in a language. And normally, this is the way, this first part right here is the way that the lexicon has been conceptualized before as a list of different words with different meanings attached to them. But the lexicon looks more, well, it doesn't look because it's abstract, but it's more or less like this, is more like this rather than this. It's more a system of interconnections. We can keep expanding this to the sides, to the infinite, or at least to the extent of the vocabulary of the language. So the lexicon is more or less a network, more than a list of words with meanings. Right, for the moment, let's move on. Another concept that is going to be very useful for this differentiation is the concept of semantic fields. So a semantic field is basically a particular area of specific vocabulary. So for example, we can talk about the field of doctors, the field of coal miners, the field of cooking or sailing, kind of related to social meaning, if you remember, or the language of mountain climbers, the language of teachers, the language of students. We can see that as being different fields of meaning or different semantic fields. So the relationships between words is going to vary or is going to be a little bit different depending on the semantic field from which we analyze the words. For example, right. So for example, we can say that one effect of lexical fields is that relationships between lexemes are more common when you analyze them in the same lexical field. For example, when you see the word, the example would be the word peak. Peak, if you analyze it from the semantic field of mountains, from the semantic field of climbing a mountain, it is a synonym of the word summit. And summit is like the top part of a mountain, basically the peak of the mountain. So the peak of the mountain is a synonym for the summit of the mountain, right? Is the final end of the mountain. But if we analyze peak from the semantic field of clothing, of hats in this case, peak is more a synonym of visor. So as you can see, the word peak has different relationships. So in this case, a relationship with the word visor and a relationship with the word summit, depending on the different fields from which you analyze the word peak. Either from the field of mountain climbing or mountains in general, mountain talk, mountain vocabulary, or from the field of or the vocabulary of clothing. That's basically the effect of semantic fields. From here, what is left for us to do is analyze some different relationships that exist between words. So we're going to see some examples of relationships that normally hold between words. We're going to begin with one that is very, very simple, and that is the relationship of synonymy. All right, so synonymy, essentially, that's the definition, different words that have the same or very similar meanings. And we're going to see some examples of that and some objections to that. But that's basically what it is. It's something that a lot of people, so at least people who have been to school, are normally familiar with, or people in just in the regular environments, even if they're not academic environments, they can sort of understand that some words can be used in similar situations, or that they have meanings that are very, very much similar. For example, if we have the words, for example, beautiful, we can say that attractive, pretty, lovely, stunning are some somewhat synonyms for these words, for the word beautiful. Or if we have the word fair, we can also say that just, objective, and partial and unbiased can be synonyms. By the way, if we analyze the word fair from the language of literature, fair can also be a synonym of beautiful. If you have ever seen a movie from the medieval times, or if you have ever read old literature, the word fair is like another word for beautiful. Or if we have the word funny, we can also say humorous, comical, hilarious, hysterical, happy, content, joyful, mirthful, upbeat, or in some cases, gay. If you remember our discussion of the word gay. If we analyze this from the perspective of old vocabulary, then the word gay can also be here. All right, hardworking, diligent, determined, industrious, enterprising, or honest. We can also see as synonyms: honorable, fair. You can see fair, sincere, trustworthy, intelligent. We can see some examples like smart, bright, brilliant, and sharp. So not a lot of complications in order to talk about synonymy. The objection is if true synonymy actually exists. So let's see some examples that are going to challenge that perspective. So the question is, does true synonymy really exist? Is it actually a thing that exists that we can analyze and see in the world? So that's something that we're going to see some perspectives about it and some different positions on it. So for example, the words sofa and couch, normally they would normally be synonyms one with one another. The difference is normally the way or the place where you can find a sofa and a couch. So normally a sofa, even though it is basically almost the same thing as a couch, normally a sofa is something you can find in an office, or for example, a psychiatrist's office or a psychologist's office, or an office in general where people wait. You can find sofas there. But a couch, or maybe it is the contrary. Maybe I'm getting confused. But that's basically the difference between sofa and couch. Is that one, you use it more for the house, for something you could find in the house. I think it would be couch, the one that you can find in your house. And the other one is more of more of a piece of furniture that you will find in offices. The second pair of words will be big and large. Do they mean the same thing all the time? So as I showed you before, I think in the previous presentation with the word big brother, if you have the word big brother, it doesn't always mean large brother. It means older but not bigger most of the times. So are these true synonyms, like exact synonyms all the time? So we can kind of say no. Or for example, this is one of the things that they teach you in essential grammar at the beginning of your courses, which is some description words, for example, thin, slim, or skinny, right? So this these words, even though people normally say that they are synonyms, they don't really imply the same thing. For example, when someone is skinny, it is related to sickness. When someone is skinny, they're not healthy. When someone is thin, well, they are not unhealthy, but they don't look good. When someone is thin, is because they don't really look good. From these three, the adjective that is actually positive and that expresses a positive meaning is slim. If you see someone that is, that is doesn't have a lot of weight, and but it's actually good looking, it looks good being like that, you can say that that person is slim. So as you can see, there are different we can also say connotations of these words that make them a little bit different. So can they really work as synonyms? So some linguists would say no, they cannot be synonyms, but some other linguists say yes. So what's the answer here? So let's see the opinion of John Said. So for example, these are some other examples of some of those words. So it says die, for example, cease living, decease, demise, part, depart, drop, expire, or go, pass away, pass on, perish, succumb, informal, pop up, or check out, croak, kick in or kick off, or bite the dust, breathe one's last, cash in, give up the ghost, go to one's grave, kick the bucket, meet one's end, or meet one's maker, pass on to the great beyond, turn up one's toes. So as you see, there are many different expressions that are supposed to be synonyms of die, but they don't really have the same meaning or the same charge as the original expression. So how can we talk about different oh, how can we talk about synonymy when we find that even between synonyms, the meanings are so different? And we can also find other examples that are the opposite. For instance, the word gores, which is basically a type of plant. So it says it's a yellow flowered shrub, kind of un arbusto, básicamente, of the pea family, the leaves of which are modified to form spines native to Western Europe and North Africa. So the word is gores. Gores is a type of plant. Well, there is a word that is very much similar to this one, or basically the same, which is the word furs. So look at the definition that the Oxford Dictionary gives about the word furs. Another term for gores. So yeah, thanks a lot, that's useful. So that means that at least furs and gores, they're true synonyms, right? They have the same exact meaning. So what can we finally conclude about synonymy, about synonyms? The conclusion would be somewhat this. We cannot discard synonymy, but we can say that true synonyms or exact synonyms are very rare. They're very strange. It's very difficult to find two words that are true synonyms in all levels of meaning. That's very difficult to find. So, some linguists, they limit the application of synonym to conceptual meaning. So, in order to find synonyms, the thing that you do is that you ignore the other types of meaning. You ignore the connotations, you ignore, what else? So you ignore affective types of emotional charges or affective charges in the meanings. You ignore collocations. Basically, you need to ignore other types of meaning in order to really see synonymy between words. So that's about synonymy. That's about synonymy. Basically, words that are similar in meaning, but it's difficult to find words that are 100% similar or exactly the same. So we have to limit the term synonymy to conceptual meaning. So literal meaning, basically. All right, the next type of meaning would be opposites, which in general people call antonyms. So obviously enough, so simple enough, words that are opposite in meaning. So I don't believe this one needs any further explanation. This is simple enough. So let's see some examples. I'm gonna show you why the name is opposites and not just directly antonymy. It's because not all the words that are different in meaning are exact antonyms. And I'm gonna show you why later. So some of those antonyms are this ones. For example, achieve and fail, or pass and fail. Another one will be idle and active. So when you're idle, you're not moving. There are some adjectives you can learn. Afraid and confident, ancient and modern, arrive and depart, arrogant and humble. So these are words that normally are taken as antonyms, as being opposite in their meanings. All right. And as I'm going to show you, there are different types of opposites. There isn't just one type of opposite. There are some different types of opposites. For example, we can talk about what we call complementary or binary or simple antonyms. The meaning of that is the words where the positive of one implies the negative of the other. So again, the positive of one implies the negative of the other. So basically, one word is going to negate the other one. That's what a simple antonym is. When one word negates completely the meaning of the other. So for example, dead and alive, we can take them as simple antonyms because there is no between. There is no half dead or half alive. Those are expressions that are contextual. When you say someone is half dead, it's contextual. But as long as they have a pulse, they are alive. And if someone doesn't have a pulse and their bodies have stopped working, they are dead, basically. So there are no middle points. There's no middle ground with these things. Or pass and fail. Either you pass or you fail, but there is no middle. In an exam, if you pass with a 3, you pass. It's not like you half passed. You pass, either you pass or you fail. And hit or miss. Again, if you're trying to hit someone, let's say with a stone or with your punches, either you hit or you miss. There is no middle ground. So that's one type of antonym, the simple ones. There is another one which is something we call gradable. antonyms. And this word gradable is important. Gradable. It says where the positive of one does not imply the negative of the other because there are intermediate states or intermediate terms. Normally this happens when there is gradation. Gradation is when there are different states or different levels to some words or to a state. So that means, for example, so let me go to the examples for a little bit and I'll come back to the definition. So I'll show you. It's better with the example. For example, we can say that hot is not precisely the simple antonym all the time of cold. Why not? Because there are states in between. There are some states in between. So it's not like dead and alive. If something is not cold, if something is not hot, it doesn't mean that it is immediately cold. Because something that is not hot can be warm, or it can be tepid, or it can be simply cool, or it can be room temperature, right? Or in the same way, when something is in when something is not cold, it doesn't mean immediately that it is hot, right? Because it can be just cool, or it can be just tepid, or when something is not cold, it can be freezing. You see? So it's not like this example right here. Because we can say that when something is not dead, it is alive. And if it is not alive, it is dead. If you don't pass, that means you fail. And if you didn't fail, you passed. You see? That's the difference. But with this ones, if something is not cold, it is not immediately sorry. If something is not cold down here, if something is not cold, it's not immediately hot. And if something is not hot, it is not immediately cold, because there are some states in between in which the object can be. So that's another perspective of antonyms, like reverse gradable antonyms. This is a type of gradation that we can do from hot to cold. Another type of antonym that we can talk about is what we call reverses. So reverses, normally we use them in terms that describe movement. All right. So these reverses are basically the different words that we use to describe the direction in which we move. So for example, so one term describes movement in one direction and the other term describes the same movement. We can talk about the same movement, and that's important. The same movement in the opposite direction. For example. Oh, well, let me ask you. What do you think? What do you think would be the opposite or the reverse of the word push, or the word come, or the word well, these two. Well, what if I say turn left? What do you think would be the reverses of these words? All right, go. All right, that's one. Turn left, turn right. The opposite of push will be pull. All right, pretty good. So that's basically it. Pushing is basically the same movement as pulling. The direction is what changes. The only thing that changes is the direction. Or coming and going, it's another difference. Or, for example, turning left, the opposite will be turning right. And we can see other ones. For example, if we say jump up or jump down, those are two different things. If I say jump up, that means you are lower and you need to go higher. And if I say jump down, that means you are higher and you need to go down, right? It's basically the same movement in different directions. That's what reverses mean. And it's another type of opposite. That's why when we talk about antonyms, we don't say, or in semantics, at least in linguistics, we don't immediately say antonyms because there are some other types of relationships that function very similarly. In general, we call those relationships opposites. So another type of opposite in this case would be something that we call converses. Converses are basically terms that describe the same situation, the same aspect of an object, only from different perspectives. For example, if I told you that there is a bug, not a bug, there is let's say a lamp. There is a lamp above my head. How would you complete the following sentence? I am How would you complete this sentences? This sentence right here. If you needed to see this situation from a different perspective. Under, yeah, that can be one word. Under. What's another one? Below. All right. Right, but below with one L. Maida. Not quite. Not quite, because if I say that the lamp is above my head, if I say that I am over the lamp, that would be a contradiction. So that would be a contradiction. All right, so as you see, it's this is the way of looking at the same situation from different perspectives. So for example, if I say Jack owns this book, or this book belongs to Jack, it's basically describing the same situation only from different perspectives. So the word own and belong, they don't mean the same thing, and they're kind of opposite in their meanings, but they can be used to describe the same situation only from different perspectives. So then again, the terms that describe the relation between two objects from different perspectives. Or for example, if I say my office is below the library, or the library is above my office. It's the way of describing the same situation only from different perspectives. All right. Yet another type of opposites. And this is the last one, I believe. Okay, hierarchical sisters. This one sounds more complicated than it is. When I show you the examples and some illustrations, it's going to be very clear. So is the terms that are at the same level in a classification system. And when you see the illustrations of this, is going to be very clear for you. So for the moment, just be content with the definition. But I promise it's gonna be clear. It's gonna be clear in a second. So I'm going to jump a couple slides in the forward. All right. For example, let's say you have this classification, the classification of colors, and the first colors that you would get will be red, blue, and yellow, right? Because this will be the how do you call that? Primary colors, if I'm not mistaken. So these colors, they belong to the same category, you see? But since they belong to the same category, they oppose each other because red is obviously not blue, blue is obviously not yellow, and yellow is not either red nor blue. Nevertheless, they belong to the same category. So we would say that this red, blue, and yellow, they are taxonomical or they are hierarchical sisters because they belong to the same level in a hierarchy. That's basically what hierarchical sisters mean. So they are opposite in meaning because they belong to the same category. They cannot be similar to each other because then they would be each other. If red is basically the same as blue, then why should we distinguish different levels in this category? It would make no sense. So that's why we distinguish different terms in the same category, in the same classification. So in this case, the classification of colors. And we can see this from the perspective of different other classifications. For example, if we transform this into animals, and we say, for example, dog in this case, and here we put beagle and German Shepherd and I don't know, pit bull. Even though they share characteristics, they are not the same thing. They oppose each other in the same classification. So that's basically what taxonomical sisters mean. That's basically what it means. That's why I say that if I classify colors, then yellow, green, well, green will be later, right? Yellow, green, black, blue, those will be taxonomical sisters. Or for example, if I classify days of the week, then I will get Monday, Sunday, Saturday, Tuesday as days of the week. And they would be hierarchical sisters. They will be opposite in meaning because they stand in the same classification. All right, lastly, let me go back to the definition. Hierarchical sisters is terms that are at the same level in a classification system. And that's why they oppose each other. That's the other type. And with this, we finish opposites. So this is the last opposite that we see. All right, so another relation between words is the relationship of hyponymy. Then again, this one just sounds more complicated than it actually is. So we say expressions that include the meaning of a more general term. All right, so I'm going to give you an example. Let's say right, let's use a familiar example. you remember this from the video of Friends, if I say Sphinx cat, what do you think is a more general, so think of a more general term. What do you think is a more general term that is included in the meaning of Sphinx cat? Feline. All right, that's one. So that means that the meaning of feline is included in the meaning of Sphinx cat. Feline is the more general expression, and Sphinx cat is the more specific term. So that's why I say expressions that include the meaning of a more general term. So in this case, the meaning of a feline is included in the meaning of Sphinx cat. Then again, I'm going to show you with more examples and more illustrations, and I'm sure this is going to be clearer. In this case, we can analyze months. For example, January, February, May, and March, we can say that these are months. So these words right here, they include the meaning of this general term, months. Each and every one of these expressions, May, February, January, or March, they include the meaning of month. They have the meaning of the general term. These words right here, cat, dog, whale, eagle, they include the meaning of the general term animal. All of them include that. So we say that these expressions that are the more specific ones, the smaller ones, we call them hyponyms. Again, we call them hyponyms. And the big ones, the expressions that are more general, we call them hypernyms. Let me show you in just a minute. A hypernym. So the hypernym is the big expression, the general expression. In the example that Carlos gave me, feline would be the hypernym, and Sphinx cat would be the hyponym. Let me see. Feline would be a hypernym, and Sphinx cat.
Professor, can you please clarify a little bit about the difference between hierarchical sisters and hyponyms?
All right, I'm going to show you right now with an illustration. You're going to help me with this illustration right here. Let me see. Let me put this for All right, so you're gonna help me right here. Give me some examples of animal. What would be another expression that I can use here? All right, cow. I'm gonna use cow. Or let's use the word more general term, cattle. And okay, insects. Those sound general enough. All right. In terms of cattle, I can have the cow, or I can have something that is not related to the cow, like what's the name of those animals that live in Africa that are like pretty dangerous? Buffaloes. Buffaloes. Right, a buffalo. Yes, the bowl. That's another one. I just wanted to be more. I wanted the example to be more extreme. All right. So the meaning of insect. Let's say I don't know, butterfly. Ugh, not a cockroach. I don't even want to think about cockroaches. Disgusting beings. All right. So when we talk about hierarchical sisters for Maya, when we talk about hierarchical sisters, we talk about a relationship. We talk about a relationship that is horizontal. So the relationship between hierarchical sisters is like this. It goes like this. So the relationship of hierarchical sister would be in the same level in a horizontal way. We're not taking into account this one because that belongs to another level. So right here, buffalo and cow, even though they are similar because they share some characteristics, they belong kind of to the same level. So they can be hierarchical sisters if we analyze them in the same level, right? But the relationship of hyponyms is a relationship that is vertical. Let me show you how. It's the relationship that is between the word cow and animal, you see, or cow and cattle, you see. So hierarchical sisters is a relationship that is horizontal in a hierarchy. They belong to the same level. And hyponyms is a relationship that is vertical, that goes up. So in this case, the meaning of cow implies the meaning of cattle. And at the same time, the meaning of cow implies the meaning of animal. As you can see, the relationship can be reversed. You can go back into these classifications. By the way, you don't need to draw classifications every time you talk about hypernyms. It's just a way of conceptualizing it. It's easier to see it, to understand it when you see some kind of illustration. So the meaning of cow implies the meaning of animal. In the same way, the meaning of butterfly implies the meaning of insect. And the meaning of insect also implies the general meaning of animal. Well, at least the idea is there. I'm not a biologist, so if any of you knows anything about biology and you're like angry because I'm butchering the terms, I'm sorry. But this is basically the idea behind sisters, hierarchical sisters, and hyponyms. Mayra, was that clearer for you? Yes. All right.
Professor,
Mayra, digo Ana.
yeah, that means that the hierarchical systems of the taxonomy is focused on like finding the categories, while the hyponym is just finding like a term.
No, the hierarchical sisters. In order to identify a hierarchical sister, you need to identify another word that would be classified on the same level. But finding the relationship of hyponyms is finding general terms that are more general, or that you would call umbrella terms that cover the other ones. Basically, what it is. So then again, the term animal is the most general term. And this term animal basically covers all the other ones. So this is getting crazy with the drawing. So all the other words that are below animal are going to carry the meaning of animal. You see? Because cattle has implied the meaning of animal, and cow also has implied the meaning of animal. So hyponyms are basically finding general terms. And as you can see, I want you to notice this. This is a relationship that can be reversed, that can go back. For example, cow can go to the very general term. That's something that's going to be, that's a piece of information that is going to be important to know in order to distinguish the next type of relationship. All right, let me delete some of this because it's getting really crazy. But I hope this illustration was a little bit more, was more useful. Let's go. Here we go too. All right. This is basically all I need. The next type of relationship is something that is kind of similar to hyponyms, but not exactly the same. All right. It's a relationship, well, it's something that we call meronymy. And it's a relationship between parts and the whole. It's a relationship, again, between parts and the whole. Maria Fernanda, yes. Yes, basically, yeah, that's basically an effective summary. It's a big category and finding the subcategories. And the elements that are in the same subcategories, they would be hierarchical sisters if they belong to the same subcategory. All right, the other relationship is the relationship of meronymy. So again, a relationship between parts and the whole. Let's try to do the same exercise we did before. Here again. But with house. Give me examples of parts of the house. Okay, living room. Living room, that can be one. Bedroom. Okay, what are some parts of the living room? All right, a sofa can be a part of the living room. What else? A table, dining table. All right, let's go with bedroom. What can be a part of a bedroom? All right, a bed. Okay, this will be sufficient. This is enough. We can work with this perfectly. All right, so the relationship of meronymy is the relationship between the part and the whole. So for example, sofa is in a relationship with living room. You see, is in a relationship with living room because it is a part of the living room. And bed is in a relationship with bedroom because it is a part of the bedroom. But notice a difference. Notice a difference between hyponyms and meronyms. If I try to go back and I try to say that a sofa is part of the living room, that's okay. But I cannot say that a sofa is part of a house because not all the houses need to have sofas, you see? But on the other hand, with the hyponyms, I can always say that, for example, a cow is an animal, but I cannot say that a sofa is 100% always part of a house. Or basically, I cannot say that a sofa, even though it is part of the living room, I cannot say that it is the living room. And I cannot say that the living room is the house. It's different from the relationship of hyponymy in that regard. So the relationships cannot be inverted in the same way. You cannot go back in the same way in which you could go back in the relationship of hyponyms. Because again, a sofa is not a living room, and a living room is not a house. It's only part of it. And those parts are not exclusive, are not 100% all the time there. A living room can be a living room without having a sofa, and a house can be a house even if it doesn't have a living room. You see? So these relationships are more typical than literal. It's just typical. They typically have this or that, but it's not all the time an obligatory element. So then again, meronymy is a relationship between the parts and the whole. In this case, the whole would be the house, and house has a relationship with living room, and then living room has a relationship with sofa or table. And we can also describe many more. For example, a house has walls, it has doors, or bedrooms or rooms in general. Bedrooms, for example, have doors, and those doors, what do doors have? They have handles, they have, I don't know. Or for example, a house has windows, and windows have glass. You see, it's a relationship between the parts of the element and the big element that contain them. Exactly. Exactly. That can be a way to summarize it. A is not B, or B is not A, is part of it. It forms part of it. So that's why I say that it's a similar relation to hyponymy, but it's different in that way. Because you don't say that, you never say that cows are part of animals, right? Because an animal is just an abstract concept. It's not really something we can see, like animal. What can be the physical manifestation of animal? It's very different. So the term animal is just an abstraction, and cow would be just a part of the classification, and it implies the meaning. So it's different. It's not the same thing. So if I go back for just a second, cows are not parts of cattle. They imply the meaning, but it's not that cows are parts of cattle. And cattle is not a part of animal. They simply imply more general meanings. Okay, so the parts, what we call the parts, is the meronyms. That's the specific term that we have, the meronyms. The meronyms. And the whole, the element that is the whole, is called the holonym. For example, the house. Or in the other examples that we work with, the living room or the bedroom. Those will be holonyms, and at the same time, they can be meronyms. All right? Any questions so far? All right, clear so far? Good. All right, so let's move on for a moment. We're almost close to the end. Now we're gonna get to kind of the final, the two last lexical relations that I want to talk about, which are some of the most common lexical relations, and these two relationships actually determine the way people create dictionaries. So, for example, the first relationship of those two that I'm going to talk about is the relationship of homonymy. Homonymy are the unrelated senses of the same phonological or written word. And I'm going to show you some of those examples. So again, this is important. unrelated. This is very important to understand. Remember that the same word, we already talked about this before, the same word can have different senses, different meanings. What we call the same word can be like the same word form. I'm talking about the form. So the same word form can have different meanings. Those meanings can be related or unrelated. If you remember the workshop that we did about sense, there were some words, for example, bank. For instance, the river bank or the financial bank. So we can say that the word bank has different senses, different meanings. And some of those meanings are related, but some of those meanings are totally unrelated. So we can talk about the relationship when the meanings of a word are not related at all, their meanings are too far away, or sometimes they can be opposites. That means that we are talking about homonymy. For example, and these are some different types of homonymy according to the author. So lexemes of the same syntactic category and with the same spelling. For example, lap as a circuit, or lap as part of the body when you sit down. So I don't know if you have ever paid attention to competitions like, for example, Formula One or NASCAR, or well, I don't really do it, but basically this term lap comes from there. Or for example, in the Olympics, when people are running in the how do you call it, the track, in the running track, and they have to give several laps around the same area. That's what we call a lap. Or when you sit down, your legs become your lap. That's where the name laptop comes from, because you're supposed to put your laptop on your lap. So this will be one type of homonym. The other one will be when they belong to the same category, but they have different spellings. And they basically sound the same. For example, ring and ring, they sound almost exactly the same. Well, not almost, they sound exactly the same, but they belong to different categories and they belong to obviously very different meanings. That's why I do the clarification here that it is the same phonological word or written word. See, phonological or written word. So in this case, ring and ring would be the same phonological word. Or another type would be different categories, but with the same spelling. For example, bear, like the animal. I know in this case it is the verb bear and the noun bear. So for example, the animal bear, it has the same writing, the same spelling, and the same phonological characteristics as the verb bear. Or of different categories as here, different categories and different spellings. For example, not as the negation and not as in when you take a rope and you create like a tangle in order to join something, that's a knot. Or for example, when gentlemen wear a tie, right? When they wear a tie around their necks and they have to create a knot. That's basically what it is. So I'm going to show you more examples, but all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this next class.